In the montane lands of the dwarves, a grim tale is oft told. A story of gods and mortals, of heroes and beasts, of glory and ruin. A story of wealth and death immeasurable. These histories of avarice and toil chronicle the legend of Irolkageth, Northhold. Good evening. Tonight, we return to the dwarves of the Uncommon Ales. The onset of war and the death of a beloved king has shaken the inhabitants of Northhold to their core. If the dwarves are to survive, they must build an army to defend themselves from the vile forces of darkness threatening them. The dwarves are nearly ready to delve deep into the depths of the world to find the bronze and iron they need to arm and armor their soldiers. But there is one thing left to be done before such work can begin. In the dwarven civilization of the Seared Hatchet, there is an ancient tradition which the dwarves hold dear. Late every autumn, when the year's trading is done and the winter's frosts have not yet set in, the Festival of Arenas is held. It is a time of competition, camaraderie, and remembrance. Now, Northhold won't be able to hold a celebration on the same scale as the Grand Festival of the capital. We have no swords for the sword-throwing competition, we have no costumes for the ceremony, and no instruments for musical performances. It's also rather late in autumn, so we'll only be able to hold the festival for about 2 weeks, and that's if we let it run a bit into winter. But in spite of our meager means, we still hold on to the spirit of the Festival of Arenas: friendship, competition, and reverence for those who came before. To prepare for the festivities, we'll be making some minor changes to our tavern. Instead of having the entire dining hall assigned as a tavern, we'll just zone the southern section for tavern activities. I'm hoping that reducing the size of the tavern will lead to people staying closer together, interacting with each other more, socializing more, and hopefully making friends. As we become more well-appointed, I'll spruce the place up a little more, but for now we can hold the Festival of Arenas in this quaint space. And the modifications to the tavern are complete. The candles are lit, the incense is burning, and the banners are hung. Let the Festival of Arenas commence! The dwarves are now making their way to the tavern to begin the festivities. And here they all are, socializing and merrymaking. We have a couple of visitors here, one human bard as well as Agun, the wolf woman, who are both taking part in the festivities. All are welcome at the Festival of Arenas. Right away, Toulon Gusilgoden, that 16-year-old scholarly dwarf from the first migrant wave, is beginning the event with a poetry recital. Let's see what verses she has to share with us. Toulon is reciting a poem called We See Prism, an example of the insightful glitter poetic form. This type of poem is split into 3 parts, one describing the past, one describing the present, and one describing the future. The poem is very, very bad. Well, let's take a listen.
Eshon ken geth, nakas gitur giret. Utizarem astos. Shistsaksik nug ritog detros. Zotval kal ukas astos. Otin en kosanos. Ir nirurzal lud nizabil gutid.
That was certainly interesting. Not exactly a traditional Festival of Arenas poem. The poet who authored it, Lighthast Boltyoung, apparently once visited our fortress. I suspect that the reason the dwarves are telling each other terrible, terrible poetry is because she probably performed it when she was here, the dwarves learned the poem, and now it's one of the few poems our dwarves actually know. In spite of the technical shortcomings of this bit of verse, the dwarves actually really enjoyed the performance. It just goes to show that the Festival of Arenas isn't just about big showy ceremonies, it's about people coming together. As long as we have friends and drink, the festival will be a joyous time. The dwarves continued to tell a number of poems to each other, generally of similar quality to the first, but always well received. Winter has come, indicating the halfway point for this year's festival. And with the coming of winter, we begin another important part of the festivities, the telling of stories. One of our masons, Deduc, is telling a story right now. He is recounting the coronation of King Zuthon in the year 82, 43 years ago. Zuthon was crowned upon the death of his father, King Monam Anvilcleans, who lived to the ripe old age of 153 before passing away from natural causes. Zuthon and his father had an interesting relationship. When he was only 12 years old, Zuthon's father had him compete in an official foot race during the Festival of Varenus that year. But King Monam also competed in the same foot race that year, against his own 12-year-old son, and, of course, Monam won the race. Royal parenting techniques seem rather baffling. Did Monam intend to impart his son with a sense of humility at a young age, to build the boy's character and help him become a more just ruler when he took the throne? Or did Monam just really like showing off how he could outcompete actual children in contests of physical prowess? Historical scholars will ponder this question for years to come. In fact, the royal family has had a colorful history of taking part in strange competitions during the Festival of Arenas. On 2 occasions, Zuthon took part in foot races against himself, with no other competitors, then declaring himself the victor. Monam was even more prone to such bizarre displays in his day, taking part in dozens, perhaps hundreds of sword-throwing competitions with no competitors other than himself, and even dabbling in surreal single-person wrestling matches where he wrestled himself and won. Duke has greatly enjoyed telling these stories and is filled with gaiety. In honor of his being the first dwarf in the fortress to tell a story for the Festival of Arenas, we're going to give him the name Tailweaver. As Northhold's first festival comes to a close, there is one last event left for the dwarves to take part in. We may not have the means to hold a traditional sword-throwing competition, but we can certainly hold the festival foot race. Our 3 militia members will be competing, as well as 5 other dwarves from the fort. The contestants will be racing across the forest from the pump station to the eastern pond here. And the contestants are off! Scratches takes the lead with Ataw the human and Pedal close behind. While the other contestants are right on his heels, he's maintaining his lead. Yes, he's staying ahead of everyone. And we have our winner. Scratches has won the admiration and respect of everyone in the fortress as the champion of the festival. He now leads the victory procession back to the fortress, head held high. He makes his way to the alcohol stockpile for a well-deserved drink. And the completion of the foot race marks the end of the Festival of Arenas. The dwarves are in high spirits and are ready to return to work, and that means the time has come to dig deep into the ground. And I do mean deep. We're digging until we find weapons-grade metals, and that could take us very far down indeed. The long staircase down to the depths will begin here at the northmost section of our fort, near the production district. This should reduce the time it takes to haul up the minerals and gems we find. The miners are beginning their dig. And here we have some metal. It didn't take too long. However, all we have here is sphalerite. Sphalerite is an ore that produces zinc, which has fairly limited use. It can only really be used to make fairly low-value furniture. It isn't weapons grade, and it doesn't even stand up to the heat of fire or magma. It is an ingredient in bronze, but unless we find copper, we won't be able to make any of that. We'll dig some of this stuff out and continue on. But here we have something far, far more valuable. We have struck gold, and what a wealth of it too. This is only a single vein, and yet it's absolutely enormous. The dwarves are very excited to start working this metal into treasures. It would be a lot easier to smelt this stuff en masse if we had more hands to work the smelters, but for now we'll get somebody working on producing charcoal. We haven't found any mineral coal, so unless we start pulling magma up to the surface, charcoal is going to be the only way to run our metal industry for a long time. The dwarves are going to have to start getting busy clearing trees from the forest, but with the sheer density of trees up there, that shouldn't be a problem. But while the wealth of gold here is hard to resist, right now we need to focus on finding weapons-grade metals. And for those, we're going to need to go deeper down. As a side note, we've started setting up an early warning defense system on the surface. These statues of dwarves are rigged up to make a loud noise when knocked over. Any building destroyer that encounters one of these dummies will hopefully attack it and alert us to its presence. As we produce cages and mechanisms, we'll rig up some cage traps around these statues to hopefully capture monsters and wildlife that might prove useful. As the miners continue their dig, they find more riches. We've struck amethyst, a fairly valuable gem. But you can't kill a goblin with an amethyst, so we delve deeper still. You have discovered an expansive cavern deep underground. The dwarves have broken through into a vast cave. This is a dark place, filled with many hidden treasures. The floor of the cavern is covered in a dense fungal mat, forever breaking down the detritus that seeps in from brighter places. The great cavern lakes teem with living things, blind and bleached. Enormous mushroom trees tower overhead. To the surface dwellers, this might seem like an inhospitable place of rot and death. But to the dwarves, this is a second home. However, even to such sturdy folk, the caves are also a place of great peril. Many dangerous and foul beasts that would make a quick meal of a dwarf lurk here in the deep. There have even been rumors, whispered in the dark, of vast creatures beyond imagining, their names long forgotten. Entering this place is not to be done lightly, but our mission demands that we search these caves, so enter we shall. The brass wars are being sent down into the cavern to visit its grand halls. Things are quiet. Whatever creatures live here are not showing themselves. The dwarves find gemstones in abundance, and gigantic spider webs. These could be retrieved by our dwarves to supply a silk industry. Let's just hope that whatever spun them is long gone. While our little militia has been exploring these caverns, the miners have been continuing down. It seems they've broken through into a second, deeper cavern. Having two caverns open at this early stage is even more dangerous. But I'm not seeing any metals in this second cavern layer, and it seems that the topography of the cave would make exploration difficult. I think we should just block up this second cavern for now and continue further down. I've also just noticed that there has been some combat in the first cavern layer. Ox has been fighting with a cave crocodile and managed to kill it without taking a scratch. An impressive feat. I'm growing more confident in her combat capabilities. At this point, the militia has explored the entire cave, and there aren't any metals anywhere. We'll come back to strip this place of gems and silk later, but for now we're going to seal this cave up and focus our attention on deeper places. And here we are, at the third and final cavern layer. Of the three layers, this one has the greatest treasures and the greatest dangers. The brass wars head back below the earth to explore. And here it is, the true wealth of the earth, the prize we've been looking for. A metal that is impossibly light, incredibly sharp, and outrageously valuable. Raw adamantine! Praise the miners! But this hoard is being guarded. 3 blind cave ogres stand between the dwarves and their glory. Blind cave ogres are massive creatures, as large as 1.5 elephants. They're extremely dangerous, and taking them on now would be quite risky. And yet, we need that adamantine. As far as I know, it's the only weapons-grade metal within the borders of Northhold. Yes, we would be better off fighting them with better equipment, but the only way we're going to get that equipment is if we mine this adamantine. We haven't come this far to be turned away by a few oversized apes. These creatures are no match for dwarven grit. Have at them! It seems that my trust in our dwarves was not misplaced. They dispatched the first ogre with ease, Ox dealing the final blow. And she now seems to be expertly dealing with the second one, single-handedly. She felled the beast without a scratch. She's off to fight the third. She's hacking it apart. And... oh no. She's been bitten in the lower body, tearing apart the stomach. This is a grievous wound. I'm not sure she can survive it. I've had such high hopes for Ox. Could this be the end? But Kadol, our inexperienced hammer dwarf, is coming down to save her. He brings his hammer down upon the beast, and with a mighty crack strikes it down. We've slaughtered the beasts, but the situation is dire. Our militia commander has a brutal wound. If she's going to survive, we need to get her back up to the hospital now. She's actually making her way to the stairway, on foot. Stomach torn apart, yet she's briskly marching back up to the surface on her own 2 feet. The tenacity of the dwarves is a miraculous thing. She may yet pull through. She's made it all the way to the hospital and is waiting for treatment. Her wounds have already improved a bit, with her stomach now being fractured, whatever that means. I'm feeling rather hopeful now. As long as Doc treats her suit, I think she'll make it. Where is Doc? Doc is currently attempting to carry one of the blind cave ogre corpses back up to the fortress. No, thank you. I'm perfectly happy with it rotting down there instead of up here. You have work to do. Well, we finally got Doc to the surface, and she's diagnosing Ox. According to the diagnosis, all Ox needs is for the wound to be cleaned and dressed. But Doc is going to get something to eat instead. She's putting off giving a seriously injured dwarf medical attention so she can eat a raccoon meat omelette. Well, she'll get to it after breakfast, I suppose. Now, if we're going to be smelting that adamantine, we're going to need to set up a new section of the production district. Adamantine processing has a couple of steps, so this is going to be a little complicated, but we'll sort it out. Also, we'll start getting to work on another somewhat tedious industry, soap production. This little scare with Ox has made me more wary of infection, so having some soap around for cleaning wounds will bring some peace of mind. Another migrant wave will get us the workforce to really put both these industries into full swing, but until then we can get some tentative starts on both production pathways. I've just noticed that Doc doesn't actually have the wound dressing labor enabled. That would explain her questionable work ethic. Now she's finally heading back to the hospital. And she's done it. Ox has finally received treatment. Now, it seems like unless there's some infection later down the line, Ox is going to be just fine. She has won glory from taking down 2 great beasts, and has a scar to prove it. She's now heading straight back to her training exercises. Earlier, I set the 3rd cavern layer to be temporarily sealed while Ox was still in need of medical attention. Now, I'm going to start digging out a proper, defensible cavern gatehouse to give us a fighting chance against anything that tries to invade from below. We'll definitely want to head back in here the moment we have enough dwarves to exploit the adamantine, so we'll try and get this set up as quickly as possible. Some additional military dwarves and war dogs to stay down here and man this entrance wouldn't go amiss either. Spring has arrived, ushering in the 2nd year of our fortress. I'm not entirely certain, but it doesn't seem like anything actually froze over this winter. We certainly didn't get any snows. It seems like even this far north the winters are quite mild. We've just gotten another petition for residency, this time from a mercenary crossbow dwarf. Welcome, Adil. We'll have him train with the brass wars for now. With the coming of spring, the elven Caravan arrives. Despite some misgivings about doing dealings with elves, it's hard to look on this particular band of elves with anything but pity. The elves of this continent have been slaughtered in many wars with the humans and goblins over the past century, leaving a scant 14 of them remaining. They have dwindled into near oblivion. A few of their remaining numbers here try to scrape by, peddling what they have, but it's not much. They have nuts and fruit for sale, as well as a few animals. They've brought a tamed giant oriole, which is a huge, brightly colored bird. However, it doesn't lay that many eggs, so it will be of limited use to us. They also have a giant mosquito, which they can take right back to wherever they brought it from, thank you very much. Far and away the most interesting and valuable thing they've brought is a spool of pitch-black fabric Nalara strings. A Nalara is some kind of stringed elven instrument, but the fabric the strings are made of is unfathomably rare. Pitch-black fabric is a divine material, said to be used to clad horrifying angelic guardians of night gods. How the elves, who don't even worship such gods, managed to acquire it is a mystery I suspect will never unravel. However, this ancient relic is far too expensive for our little fortress, and we can't really make use of it anyway. We'll buy some food and an animal or two to slaughter. A troll just destroyed a smelter in our fortress. There is currently a troll inside our fortress, busting up the area we've set aside for our metal industry. It must have snuck in from some gap in the wall we tried to build to seal up the 3rd cavern. Well, let's get rid of this thing before it starts busting up something that has a pulse. The brass wars have swiftly dealt with it, though Cadol's right hand was broken. We'll have to get that patched up. While the troll is dead, its corpse is lying inside our fortress. Dwarves can grow uneasy seeing bodies of intelligent creatures, and even if we take it up to a refuse stockpile on the surface, the sight of it could be an issue for any psychologically vulnerable citizens. One troll corpse isn't a huge problem, but when war comes to the fortress, we'll need an efficient way to dispose of the inevitable viscera. The less mechanically inclined races like humans might use brute methods like burning or burying the dead, and the elves have their own ways of disposing of corpses, but we dwarves have devised an elegant solution. The dwarven garbage smasher is a marvel of engineering, surpassed in efficiency only by that molten panacea of the earth, magma. Simply drop the offending giblets into the receptacle and observe in awe as the perfectly tuned mass of gears and smashing blocks of stone at the bottom instantly pulverize everything into a fine pink mist. We've begun the process of digging out the housing for the garbage smasher. It shouldn't take too long for it to be operational. While we wait for more hands to arrive, we'll begin digging out a simple strip mine where we found that gold. Hopefully we'll also find some gemstones. Recall that the mountain home will pay extra for them come autumn. The were-elk Kib Otem Kilrude no Tomrist has come. A large elk twisted into humanoid form. It is crazed for blood and flesh. Its eyes glow spring green. Its black hair is long and shaggy. Now you will know why you fear the night. This huge shambling horror of the night is a grave threat to our fortress. A single bite from such a creature would begin a were-elk infection that could rapidly spread throughout our populace. This individual is also incredibly muscular, which only adds to the threat. Equipped as we are, I see no reason to risk a direct confrontation. We don't have too many dwarves on the surface, they're all near the entrance, and the were-elk is currently distracted killing our livestock. With some luck, our citizens can escape into the fortress and close the gate before it spots any of them. Our dwarves are making their way in, and we have the entrance closed. That was a close thing. If we get that early warning system expanded to cover our entire border, we might be able to get more time to react to a situation like this, but it still won't be a sure thing. We'll have to always keep the threat of were-creatures in the back of our mind. There's no knowing when one might show up. And with impeccable timing, a migrant wave has arrived. I shudder to imagine what could have happened if these migrants were outside when that creature showed up. But this is excellent. We can now properly begin our metal industry and start smelting adamantine. I've assigned people to furnace operating, blacksmithing, metal crafting, armor making, and some other miscellaneous jobs. I have also used the new workforce to expand our military. The Brass Wars now includes a total of 9 dwarves. Ox has also appointed a second squad of Marks dwarves, which she has named the Inky Trenches. We, might end up changing that name later. We'll get them all started with basic combat drills, though we'll need weapons if we want these soldiers to really start training properly. This was an impressively sized group of migrants. There are now 56 citizens in the fortress. The more the better. Every new member of the fortress means more production and a larger militia. The first thing we'll do here is start digging out more bedrooms and producing beds. We'll also need to make a special set of larger quarters, because we now have a mayor. Her name is Shorast Estundatan. She is a master miner that just joined in that migrant wave, and was immediately elected by our dwarves. She's a professional intimidator, conversationalist, and consoler, and a great comedian, as well as an accomplished musician. She's 117 years old, and she's very strong. She seems like a charismatic leader, and I can appreciate a mayor who's willing to get her hands dirty down in the mines. Here's to a productive term of office. It seems that a monster hunter, Unib Whimsfences, wants to join our fortress. We'll let her in. Maybe she can get lucky and take down something dangerous before it gets into the fort. A farmer has withdrawn from society to work on a mysterious project. This fellow arrived in that recent migrant wave. It seems he's planning on making some kind of wooden craft. Let's see what he produces for us. Summer arrives, and with it the fruits of this dwarf's strange mood. Zuthon Lolokenseb has created Strasse, a bayberry wood earring. He claims it as a family heirloom. This bayberry wood earring is decorated with donkey bone, encircled with bands of point-cut purple spinels, adorned with hanging rings of bayberry wood, and it features a depiction of a walrus man in bayberry wood. Yet more wooden artifacts. I'm not entirely excited about this one. A wooden earring is a pretty mediocre treasure. Now, while we can't really make use of this thing, it's worth a pretty penny to a caravan. This thing has a value of 28,800, which will buy us quite a bit. The dwarf who made it apparently claimed it as a family heirloom, but he's just going to have to part with it. This trinket is more valuable to us in a caravan than it is in the fortress. We've finished setting up the dwarven trash smasher, and we're now ready to start obliterating garbage. We'll set that troll to be thrown into the pit, along with some other unusable animal body parts that have been amassing in our garbage heap. The summer human caravan has just arrived from the brave unions of the East. These humans have been engaged in petty squabbles and skirmishes with the elves and goblins over the past century. We dwarves have stayed neutral in such pointless wars until the goblins recently forced us into conflict. Now we may find allies in these ambitious people. In any case, the humans tend to bring a great wealth of trade goods, so we're happy to accommodate their merchants. They'll also accept this new wooden artifact we've made as barter, which should be valuable enough to purchase just about anything we might want from their stores. We'll buy drink and brewable fruit, meat, cheese, and fish, great quantities of cloth, thread, and leather, weapons for arming our militia, metal trinkets for melting down into more arms, gems to resell to the dwarven caravan, as well as some parchment and a few books. These huge amounts of food, textiles, and metals provide a surge in our production, and leave us far better stocked than we were before. We have Zuthon Lolokenseb, the farmer who built that earring, to thank, because the entire wealth of this caravan was purchased by that single earring. We'll have to make sure his room ends up particularly well furnished as gratitude. The books and parchment we purchased will be used to supply a new library the dwarves are digging out in our residential district. Reading books can be a therapeutic experience for many dwarves, and a dedicated facility for writing books will provide a creative outlet for our more scholarly citizens, like scrolls. The library will be 2 floors high, with a reading room on the lower level and a balcony above that provides a space for scholars to write and discuss intellectual concepts. One of our new blacksmiths, in fact, the same dwarf who made that earring artifact, has just forged a golden statue of Ox depicting her being chosen as our military commander. I had originally ordered a gold statue to be forged to be used as a trade good, but now that he's built such a glorious statue of such a beloved hero, I'm inclined to hold on to it. For now, we'll proudly display this treasure in the center of our dining hall. However, we will need some valuable trade goods to barter with the dwarves come autumn. The mountain home told us last year that they would pay a premium for any figurines we produce, so starting production on golden figurines seems like an excellent way to turn a profit. We're finally getting some soap produced, and I'll also start ordering the production of more crutches and splints to really stock up our hospital. And with our medical facilities so appointed, I think we're now ready to make another assault on the Caverns. Our new militia dwarves have very little experience, and they don't have much in the way of armor, but they've got a good assortment of weapons from that human caravan. A silver flail, a whip, a scimitar, and a spear. Their mission is to defend the miners from anything that tries to harass them while the adamantine is mined. Go forth, warriors and miners alike! Secure our glory! Seeing our brave diggers and their armed escort marching off to recover the ore is a wonderful thing. All of our toil over the past year is finally going to pay off. The creatures of the cavern are largely avoiding our dwarves. Many Crundles lurk nearby at the moment, but they are rightly intimidated by our huge mining party and have kept their distance. This adamantine vein seems rather large and will supply us with a great wealth of arms until we find another. With this legendary metal, wealth and vengeance for our dwarves is guaranteed. For our enemies, only death. The dwarves are now poised to build the most well-armed army in the entire land of granite. None shall stand against the might of Northhold. But it's getting late, and I must retire. Come find me again some other night, and hear more of the dwarves of old, and their doomed fortress.